And I think back to my own shameful experience in the Marine Corps. And it's really tough coming back. And I got to be really humble in a way, talking about this message, talking about the absolute moral philosophy, because I'm a damn slow learner. I was a libertarian in high school because I didn't want to be a damn Republican or Democrat. Oh, what's my option? Leave me alone. Yeah, sign me up for that. I mean, how many of y'all got started with something as simple as that? You just realize something's wrong with Republicans and Democrats. That should have been an easy one to figure out, right? And it took me about 10 years. I had to go to Iraq and get shot at and come home and be like, God damn, that was dumb. To start waking up to this. And really, my start in politics was in the anti-war movement with Iraq Veterans Against the War, and I was surrounded by liberals. And I was like, well, I'm a libertarian, so I know I'm right about everything. I just got to prove it. So I wanted the airtight arguments. And I realized I didn't know shit. You know, I realized that I had a lot of learning to do. But I wanted those airtight arguments. I wanted the proof. I wanted it to be irrefutable. Not a matter of preference. Hey, more freedom good, less freedom bad. No, freedom as a moral concept. How does that apply to everything? And when you get it as a philosophy, it really untangles that knot. So I look back like, I was a libertarian and yet I volunteered to go to Fallujah. That's embarrassing. I mean, it's taken me a lot of practice to make it easy to admit that.
Yeah. And then you signed a contract.
And it was not a contract. It was an enlistment document. Thank you very much. For anybody in the room considering enlisting, it's not a contract. It is a one-way obligation, and the fine print on the document actually says something to the effect of, we can change the terms and conditions of this agreement at any time with no notice to you whatsoever. Yeah, that's not a contract. So I had to, but what we were capable of in terms of the evil that we did in Fallujah, and you know what, I tortured people. I'm not proud of that, but I'm able to put that in context and realize the criminality of what I did. And in a way, I feel like anything I get fighting government here, I deserve it.
First in line.
But, yeah, I'll be first in line, don't worry. I'm still on the top of the list. Y'all better catch up. But anybody commit any, or actually deliberately go out and get arrested for felony civil disobedience?
Not
One hand? Excellent.
I carry my pistol on the motorcycle.
Oh, hold on. I don't know if you want to get that on record. No?
It's gone now, so.
Oh, okay. Already done. We have someone on the run. Get them on camera. All right. But what we were capable of, if you think about it, is insignificant compared to, say, World War II or Vietnam. Now, I really want you to think about this for a second. This is a very important concept. The high tide of government. We have already passed the high tide of war.
We hope so.
At no point from now on in human history will you be able to convince millions of people to go kill people they've never met on the other side of the planet. And wrap your head around that. That's a beautiful thing. What do they have to do? Oh, it's the terrorists. Well, we have to occupy the entire country because there are a few of them who hypothetically support this tiny minority that are actually willing to fly planes into buildings, if you believe that. And if they can convince, if that's the best they can get away with, and with as much of an impact as 9/11 had on the psychology of the nation and the world, and the worst they were able to produce from that was the global war on terror, we've come a long way from tens of millions dying, just for no good reason, for the racket that is war. And from Vietnam to today, there has not been that same kind of racket that they have been able to get away with. Now, it takes a little stepping back. Because a lot of the times you wake up to this as a libertarian and you see everything around you that you feel like, oh, well, now I'm supposed to be afraid of this. And like I said, if you're going to be afraid, you're giving in. But you're never going to convince people to do that again when I can go on Skype and communicate with someone in Iran as easy as someone in Texas. Wow! Do you see the connectedness there that technology has provided us? Now, technology is fundamentally empowering. A lot of people now, I mean, how many of you have been led to be afraid of technology because of the NSA? It's not the technology, it's who controls it. It's a very important distinction. And with every advancement that we experience in technology, the distribution of it happens faster and faster. We go back to Gutenberg, printing press, right? How long did it take Gutenberg Bibles just to get around Europe? Decades. And now the comparison is, well, the communications technology that Bill Clinton had at the beginning of his presidency was available to a Bushman in sub-Saharan Africa by the end of his presidency with a smartphone. You see where this is going? And we're coming to a very interesting point in human history. Now, a lot of people think there's a collapse coming. And there are only so many things that can collapse, right? The government, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. The money system, which again, in the age of Bitcoin, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And the third thing is the internet, right?
That would suck.
Now, what happened in Egypt when they shut down the internet? The universal rallying cry was, when the government shuts down the internet, it's time to shut down the government. Now, China's a great example of what governments can get away with. But even there, they're really just nibbling around the edges. This is an unstoppable force of awareness and connectedness. Do you know how much government relies on fear and misinformation and lies? And just now that we all have the truth button right here in our pockets, one click away, the kids that have these under their desks in high school today, they're the ones that are going to change the world. You can lie to us, but you can't get away with it for very long. That is a game changer. And it's getting better every single day. And you might think, okay, Adam, war, got it. Well, we still have the NSA. We still have the police state. Well, I can tell you, I've been arrested actually several dozen times. Most of them are petty bullshit, cite and release on Capitol Hill. You get arrested for protesting. You make a nice show of it. They put you in zip ties. They bring you to a big, processing center. You pay $50 and they let you go. Or you get arrested for dancing. and you get body slammed, and then you get zip cuffed, and then you get to pay your $50 and you get let go.
And everybody watches.
But that one we actually got to fight and win. But where we're going with this technology leads to a whole other kind of connectedness. Now, just to go back for a second, if you understand that government is coercion, government is violence, some kind of control by domination, I would describe it as the institutionalization of all of humanity's worst desires to control and dominate and manipulate others by force. Well, part of my fantasy of futurism empowering humanity is that at some point, we're all going to get therapy robots. And anytime you start yelling at your wife, tell me how you really feel. It's going to be right there behind you. And then you think, well, wait a second. This is already happening with the internet. Anytime I look forward in these bigger trends, I go, wait a second. Look at what's happening right now. This is already present in our lives. How many of you have been able to realize through the internet that based on some fear that you had, some insecurity, some personal challenge you were facing in your life, that might have had you afraid or feeling isolated, thanks to the internet, thanks to the communication capabilities that we have now, led you to understand you're not alone. How powerful is that? Just as we've seen, I mean, by some measures, the libertarian movement really only exists on Facebook. It's funny because it's true, sorry. But what we are coming to is a state of connectedness that is fundamentally disconnecting the ability of the superclass through the politicians to get the enforcers to use violence against everybody else. And the reason I reference my petty protest experience is that when you're a cop on Capitol Hill, you know why the protesters are there. It's not like Vietnam. And if you can remember back to the protests around Vietnam, I'm not just talking about Kent State, but they were using U.S. military troops against protesters on American soil. They had U.S. Marines marching against protesters. Holy crap. Oh, well, they're communist, anti-American scumbags. Okay, when do we get to shoot them? That doesn't fly anymore. Because the cops all have smartphones in their pockets too. And they got to go home to the same Facebook as the rest of us. And they got to go back to the same communities where we live and face up to what they are a part of and what they are responsible for.